He didn't pack for a disaster. He packed a ham sandwich, a thermos of black coffee, and a laminated photo of his 7-year-old son that he kept tucked in the front pocket of his work vest, right over his heart. That's it. That's all Wade Harmon brought onto the Meridian Star on what was supposed to be a routine, 2-day inspection voyage. He had no idea that within 48 hours, that ship would be half sinking in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That he would be the only thing standing between a cold, untouchable billionaire and the sea trying to swallow her whole. And that by the time they finally made it back to land, nothing between them would ever be the same again. But here's the part that'll really get you. Her final demand. The thing she looked him dead in the eyes and said the moment dry land was under their feet, that changed everything. Stay with me, because this is the kind of story that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about strength, about loss, and about what it really means to be seen. This is Wade and Sloane's story, and it starts, like most unbelievable things do, on an ordinary morning. Wade Harmon was not a man who complained. He had 34 years of living proof of that. He grew up in a small town outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, the kind of town where everybody knew everybody's business, and the general expectation was that you'd either leave or quietly disappear into routine. Wade left. He went to college on a partial scholarship, earned a degree in marine engineering, and eventually landed in Boston, where he built himself a quiet, steady life. He met Claire when he was 26. She was a second-grade teacher with a laugh so big it filled rooms. On their first date, she talked for 45 minutes straight about the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies and never once apologized for it. Wade was halfway in love before the appetizers arrived. They got married. They bought a small house in Charlestown, the kind with a porch that creaked and a kitchen that was always just slightly too small. They had Finn. And then, 2 years ago, Claire was gone. A wet highway on a Tuesday evening. A truck that ran a red light. And just like that, the center of Wade's world disappeared in the time it takes to blink. He doesn't talk about it much. People who know him well, and there aren't many, say you can see it sometimes. In the slight hitch in his voice when Finn laughs a certain way. In the way he still makes 2 cups of coffee every morning before catching himself. But Wade Harmon is not a man who complains. So he wakes up every morning at 5:15. He makes Finn's lunch, turkey and cheddar, crusts cut off, a note on a napkin because Finn still can't read cursive, so Wade prints in block letters. He drives Finn to school. He goes to work. Work, specifically, is Fairfax Maritime Corporation, one of the largest private shipping and luxury vessel companies on the eastern seaboard. Wade is their senior maritime safety compliance officer. That means he's the man who walks through billion-dollar ships with a clipboard and a critical eye, making sure nothing kills anybody. It's not glamorous work, but it's important work, and Wade does it with a level of precision that his colleagues describe as either admirable or exhausting, depending on the day. His supervisor, Dale Pruitt, a heavy-set man from New Jersey who has somehow managed to make cargo shorts look professional, once told Wade that he was the most inconveniently thorough person he'd ever hired. Wade took it as a compliment. Now, about the company. Fairfax Maritime was founded by Sloane Fairfax's father, Robert Fairfax, 30 years ago. It started as a mid-size cargo operation out of Providence. Over the years, it expanded. Cargo became logistics. Logistics became cruise partnerships. Cruise partnerships became owning luxury vessels outright. When Robert Fairfax died of a heart attack 6 years ago, he left the company to his only daughter. And that's when everything changed. Sloane Fairfax. If you work at Fairfax Maritime and someone says her name, the room gets about 3 degrees colder. She is 36 years old. Stanford MBA. Fluent in 3 languages. Has the kind of posture that makes you feel like you're the one slouching even when you're standing perfectly straight. She is brilliant, precise, and deeply, deliberately unreachable. In her 6 years running Fairfax Maritime, she has tripled the company's revenue, launched 2 new vessel lines, secured government contracts that her father had been chasing for a decade, and fired 11 executives, not impulsively, but methodically, each one justified with documentation so airtight that not a single termination was ever challenged in court. She works 14-hour days. She does not do small talk. She has never, not once, visited the company break room. And she does not concern herself with the names of people who work below the director level. Wade Harmon, Senior Safety Compliance Officer, is not a director. Which means, as far as Sloan Fairfax knows, he is a clipboard and a hard hat. That's about to change. The Meridian Star was Fairfax Maritime's crown jewel. 180 meters of floating luxury, custom-built in a Norwegian shipyard over 3 years, designed to redefine what a private charter vessel could be. 42 suites, each one larger than most Manhattan apartments. A glass-bottom observation deck. A restaurant helmed by a 2-Michelin-star chef. A helipad. A climate-controlled wine cellar that, frankly, Wade found offensive given that you were already on a boat. It was scheduled for its official maiden voyage in 6 weeks, carrying high-net-worth clients on a 10-day Atlantic crossing. But first, a shakedown cruise. 3 days at sea, skeleton crew, no passengers. The purpose? Identify any remaining issues before the real thing. Engineering, navigation systems, safety protocols, lifeboats, fire suppression, emergency communications. All of it needed a final sign-off. That sign-off was Wade's job. He found out about it on a Monday morning when Dale dropped a thick file folder on his desk and said, "You leave Thursday. Dock 6 a.m. Try not to find too many problems." Wade opened the folder, skimmed the specs, and said, "I'll find exactly as many problems as there are." Dale sighed. "That's what I was afraid of." Wednesday night, Wade sat on the edge of Finn's bed. Finn was 7 now, small for his age, with Claire's brown eyes and a gap-toothed smile that could stop traffic. He was obsessed with dinosaurs the way some kids are obsessed with superheroes, with a level of dedication that Wade found both impressive and slightly inconvenient when Finn tried to bring his full collection of plastic dinosaurs to school. "I'll be back Friday night," Wade told him. "Grandma Patty will be here the whole time." "What if the boat sinks?" Finn asked, very matter-of-factly, while arranging a Stegosaurus and a T-Rex on his pillow. "Ships don't usually sink. The Titanic sank. That was a long time ago. They've gotten much better at making ships since then." Finn considered this seriously. "How much better?" "Very much better. That's actually my job, making sure ships are safe." Finn looked at him with those big brown eyes. "Okay," he said finally. Then he handed Wade a small plastic Brachiosaurus. "Take Bruno. He's good luck." Wade looked at the little green dinosaur in his palm. He tucked it into his work vest. Right next to the laminated photo of Finn. "I'll bring him back," he said. "Obviously," said Finn, rolling his eyes in a way that was almost terrifyingly similar to how Claire used to. Wade kissed his son's forehead, turned off the light, and went to bed. He slept 4 hours. Thursday morning. Dock 6 a.m. The Meridian Star loomed in the harbor like something out of a dream. All steel and glass, lit from within, absolutely enormous against the gray Boston sky. Wade stood at the base of the gangway with his clipboard, his thermos, and his bag, and did what he always did on a job like this. He took a breath. He focused, and he went to work. The skeleton crew was small. 18 people total, a captain, a first officer, engineers, deckhands, galley staff. Wade knew a few of them from previous inspections. Captain Hugh Farley, 50s, deeply tanned, the kind of man who looked like he'd been born at sea, shook Wade's hand at the bridge and said, "Welcome aboard, Harmon. Let's hope you don't find anything that makes me look bad." "No promises," Wade said, and Hugh laughed. By 9 a.m., Wade was 3 decks deep in his inspection. He'd already flagged 2 fire suppression sensors that weren't calibrating properly, a secondary bilge pump that needed recalibrating, and a lifeboat davit mechanism on the port side that he wasn't satisfied with. He was on his hands and knees inside a maintenance corridor, flashlight in his teeth, when he heard the commotion above. He climbed back up, and that's when he saw her. Sloan Fairfax stood on the main deck in a charcoal gray coat, flanked by 2 assistants who were practically jogging to keep pace with her. She had a phone pressed to her ear and a tablet in her hand, and she was giving quiet, rapid instructions in a tone that suggested the universe should rearrange itself accordingly. Wade had seen her exactly twice before, both times at company-wide meetings where she stood at a podium and delivered financial projections with the energy of someone who had personally invented money. He'd never interacted with her directly. He watched her for a moment, then went back to his inspection. It was Dale who found him 20 minutes later in the engine room and said, breathlessly, "She's staying." Wade looked up. "Who?" "Fairfax. She's staying on the ship for the shakedown cruise." Wade blinked. The whole 3 days? Apparently, there's some board member situation. She needs to meet with the Halverson group, and Halverson's people are coming to the ship by tender tomorrow morning because they refuse to do anything the normal way because they're billionaires. And Dale stopped, caught his breath. The point is, she's on this ship for 3 days. Okay, Wade said, and looked back at the engine coupling he'd been examining. Dale stared at him. She's Sloane Fairfax. I know who she is, Dale. People don't just act normal around Sloane Fairfax. Wade checked a gauge reading. People should try it. It's less exhausting. Dale left muttering something under his breath that Wade didn't catch. The ship departed at noon. The ocean was calm. The sky was the kind of pale blue that makes you feel like the world might actually be okay. Wade stood on the aft deck for exactly 90 seconds, let himself feel the open water, then went back inside to finish his inspection. He was documenting findings in a corridor on Deck 4 when he nearly ran directly into Sloane Fairfax. They both stopped. She looked at him, at the clipboard, at the hard hat tucked under his arm. You're the safety inspector, she said. Not a question. Wade Harmon, yes. What have you found? He told her, straightforwardly, without softening anything. The fire sensors, the bilge pump, the davit. He explained each issue, its severity, its solution timeline. She listened without interrupting, which wasn't what he expected. The davit, she said when he finished. How serious? Serious enough that I've flagged it as priority 1. The portside lifeboat in that section shouldn't be used in an emergency until it's corrected. She held his gaze. You're certain? I don't put things in the priority 1 column unless I'm certain, Miss Fairfax. Something shifted slightly in her expression. Not warmth exactly. More like recalibration. Fix it, she said. That's my plan. She walked away. Wade wrote 3 more notes on his clipboard and kept moving. Day 1 passed without incident. The crew was professional. The ship was extraordinary despite its issues, and by evening Wade had cleared 6 of his original 14 concerns. He ate dinner in the crew mess, a genuinely excellent fish chowder that he made a mental note to compliment someone on, and called Finn before bed. How's the boat? Finn demanded. Ship. It's a ship, and it's very impressive. Did you bring Bruno? Bruno is right here. Good. Does the ship have dinosaur stuff? It does not. It has a climate-controlled wine cellar. What's wine? Something Daddy sometimes needs after a long day. Finn giggled. Claire's giggle, and Wade's chest did that familiar, quiet ache it always did. I love you, bud. Go to sleep. Love you too, Daddy. Don't let the boat sink. Ship. Don't let the ship sink. Working on it. He slept well that night. Better than he expected. Day 2 started calm and turned complicated around mid-morning. Not on the ship, on the sea. Wade was doing a final walk of the emergency communication systems on the bridge when Captain Farley came in from the exterior deck with a look on his face that Wade had learned, over years in maritime safety, was never good. What is it? Wade asked. Weather system, Farley said, handing him a printed satellite readout. Wasn't in the forecast 48 hours ago. Atmospheric pressure drop, significant, moving faster than the models predicted. Wade studied the printout. He was not a meteorologist, but he'd spent 12 years reading weather data in relation to ship safety, and he understood exactly what he was looking at. How fast, he asked. Fast enough that we're looking at serious sea conditions by tonight. Possibly severe. How severe? Farley met his eyes. Category 3 equivalent wind speeds. 40 to 50-foot swells at peak. Wade set the printout down carefully. Can we outrun it? Not entirely. We can position ourselves to take the least impact, but we're going to be in it. Wade nodded slowly. What about the guests? He caught himself. Miss Fairfax. I'm informing her now. The afternoon became a controlled urgency. Sloane Fairfax, to her credit, did not panic. She came to the bridge, looked at the same data Farley had shown Wade, and asked a series of sharp, intelligent questions about the ship's structural tolerance and the crew's storm protocol. She postponed the board meeting with Halverson's people, who were already en route by helicopter and had to be rerouted, and told her 2 assistants to secure everything in their quarters. Then she turned to Wade, who was standing near the navigation console. How prepared is this ship for what's coming? She asked. Better than it would have been before I got here, he said. That's not an answer. We've got strong structural integrity, functioning primary and backup power, emergency communications that I personally verified this morning, and the crew knows what they're doing. He paused. It's going to be rough, but we'll come through it. She studied him for a moment. You don't sugarcoat things. Never seen the point in it. The storm hit at 8:47 p.m. Wade was in the main corridor on deck 3 when the Meridian Star lurched, a massive, sideways heave that threw him against the wall. He caught himself on a railing, got his feet under him, and immediately started moving. What followed was 3 hours that Wade would later describe, in the flattest possible terms, as extremely eventful. The seas were merciless. The ship pitched and rolled in ways that made the entire structure groan. Sounds like the ocean itself was testing the hull's resolve. Waves crashed over the bow in thundering curtains of white water. The power flickered twice before emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in that particular yellowish glow that meant this is not a drill. The crew was excellent. Captain Farley had them moving through the storm protocol with the kind of calm authority that comes from having done this before. Systems were secured, hatches were dogged, the engine room held steady. But around the 2-hour mark, a wave hit the ship broadside. The kind of wave that doesn't ask permission. The impact was concussive. Wade felt it through his feet, his chest, his back teeth. Alarm screamed. The Meridian Star shuddered from stem to stern. And somewhere deep in the ship, something broke. The damage report came in over 15 minutes. The broadside wave had compromised 2 watertight doors in the lower cargo hold. A design flaw Wade had flagged, actually, buried in item 11 of his preliminary report, not yet corrected. Water was getting in. Not catastrophically, not immediately, but steadily. The primary navigation system was down. Backup was functioning, but limited. The satellite communication array on the upper deck had been partially sheared by the impact. They could receive, but transmitting was patchy at best. Captain Farley gathered Wade, the first officer, and the chief engineer on the bridge. The conversation was quiet, professional, and grim. We've sent a mayday, Farley said. Coast Guard has confirmed receipt. Nearest response vessel is 14 hours out. Weather prevents anything closer. 14 hours, Wade repeated. In current sea conditions, yes. They're dispatching as fast as they can. The chief engineer, a woman named Sandra with the bearing of someone who had fixed things under pressure her entire life, spread a damage diagram on the chart table. The flooding is controlled right now. We can keep it controlled for 12 to 16 hours with active pumping. After that, she tilted her head. It gets complicated. Which means, Farley said carefully, we may need to consider a partial evacuation. Non-essential personnel off on lifeboats while conditions allow. Reduce the number of people on board before the situation evolves. Wade looked at the chart, looked at the storm track overlaid on it, looked at the lifeboat deployment window. You've got maybe a 4-hour window where conditions are rough but survivable for lifeboat launch, he said. After that, the sea state gets worse before it gets better. If you're going to move people off, it needs to happen in the next 2 hours. 3 at the outside. Farley nodded. That's my assessment as well. The evacuation wasn't chaos. It was controlled and it was fast. Farley was methodical. Non-essential crew went first, galley staff, housekeeping, 2 deckhands. All 4 of Sloane's traveling staff. The assistants who'd been practically glued to her side went into a lifeboat looking pale but holding together. Wade coordinated lifeboat deployment from the starboard side. The sea was punishing. Each lifeboat launch was a carefully orchestrated moment, waiting for the right swell, releasing at the right second. He stood on the launch deck in full foul-weather gear, rain driving sideways, and talked each group through it with a steady voice. The last evacuation group went into the water at 12:41 a.m. Wade did a head count. 11 people left on board. Captain Farley, First Officer Pete Stroud, Chief Engineer Sandra, 3 engineering crew members essential for flood management, 2 deckhands, a medic named Rudy, and Sloane Fairfax. Sloane, who had watched the evacuation from the interior doorway and refused, flatly, unmovably, without a single dramatic word, to get in a lifeboat before the crew. The crew stays, she'd said when Farley tried to redirect her. So I stay. Farley had looked at her for a long moment, then at Wade, then back at her. Miss Fairfax, I know what I'm doing, Captain. Don't waste time on me. And so the night became about survival. The remaining 11 people on the Meridian Star did what people do when the alternative is unthinkable. They worked. They monitored the flooding. They ran the pumps. They kept systems alive one at a time. They watched the weather readouts and waited for the storm to break. Wade moved constantly, checking, fixing, reinforcing, reporting. He worked alongside Sandra's engineering team with the same matter-of-fact competence he brought to everything. At some point around 3 a.m., in a lower maintenance corridor where he was helping reseal a damaged bulkhead, he realized Sloane Fairfax was standing 3 feet behind him, holding a flashlight steady without being asked to. He looked up at her. She looked at the bulkhead. "What do you need?" He told her. She did it. No questions. No performance. Just did it. They worked in near silence for 40 minutes. The ship groaned around them. The storm pushed against the hull, and Sloane Fairfax, Billionaire CEO, held a flashlight and passed tools and followed directions from a man whose name she'd only just learned yesterday. When they finally stepped back and the seal held, Wade exhaled. "Good work," he said. She said nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, "Thank you for not treating me like I couldn't handle it." Wade looked at her. Really looked, maybe for the first time, past the posture and the coat and the carefully constructed untouchability. She looked exhausted and determined, and something else, something that might have been fear, pushed so far down it barely registered. "People usually can handle more than they think," he said simply. They made it to dawn. Battered, exhausted, waterlogged, but they made it to dawn. The sea calmed with the sunrise. Not completely, but enough. The storm had broken. The flooding was stable. They had 10 hours, give or take, before rescue arrived. Captain Farley called everyone to the main lounge, the grand, glass-ceilinged room on deck 2 that was designed for champagne and scenery and was now scattered with emergency gear and wet towels. "Rescue ETA is 10 hours, he said. "We have structural integrity. We have power. We have food and water. We hold position, we maintain the pumps, and we wait." Any questions? No one had questions. Everyone was too tired for questions. Wade drank half his thermos of coffee, somehow, miraculously, still warm, and sat with his back against the wall. He pulled the laminated photo of Finn out of his vest pocket. Looked at it. Finn at the beach last summer, in a ridiculous inflatable dinosaur float, grinning so wide his whole face was basically teeth. He was so tired that the ache of missing him was almost physical. "Your son." He looked up. Sloane was standing a few feet away, holding a mug. Not standing over him in the way that implied authority, just standing. "Yeah." He held up the photo slightly. "Finn. He's 7. She looked at it from where she stood. "He looks like he thinks the world is hilarious." Wade almost smiled. "He does, actually. Gets it from his mother." Sloane sat down, not nearby, but in the same general vicinity. She wrapped both hands around the mug. "Is she at home?" "She died 2 years ago." The silence that followed was careful. Not uncomfortable, careful. "I'm sorry," Sloane said. And it wasn't the reflexive, detached kind of sorry that people deploy to move past an awkward moment. It sounded real. "Waited." "Thank you," Wade said. More silence, but the kind that had room in it. "I have no idea what that's like," she said eventually. "Losing someone that way." And then just continuing. "You don't really have a choice," he said. "When there's a kid looking at you every morning, you figure out how to continue." Sloane turned the mug slowly in her hands. "My father died 6 years ago. I thought I understood grief. But," she stopped, "I threw myself into the company. I just worked. I wonder sometimes whether that was coping or just running in place." Wade looked at her. "Were you close? To your father?" "We were before the company became everything." A pause. "Toward the end, we mostly spoke in board meetings." He let that sit. "That's a hard thing to carry," he said finally. She looked at him sharply, like she expected the words to be pitying. They weren't. They were just true. Something unlocked, slightly, in the air between them. It was First Officer Pete Stroud who found it. He came to Wade quietly, around noon, while most of the remaining crew was resting. "I need you to look at something," Pete said. He took Wade down to the lower cargo hold, the flooded section, where the water level was still being actively managed. He shone a flashlight at the compromised watertight doors. Wade looked. Then he crouched down, looked closer. The seals on the watertight doors weren't just weak from age or manufacturing tolerance. They'd been scored, deliberately, with something thin and precise, a tool, not a flaw. The damage was subtle enough to pass a casual inspection, but designed to fail under exactly the kind of lateral pressure a broadside wave would create. Wade looked at Pete. Pete looked back. How long have you been sailing? Wade asked quietly. 19 years. Is this what I think it is? Pete's jaw was tight. I think someone wanted this ship to go down, and I think they planned it carefully enough that it was supposed to look like an accident. Wade stood up slowly. Who knew the Meridian Star's exact design specs well enough to know where to hit? He asked. That's a short list, Pete said. The shipyard. Our engineering team. And he hesitated. Senior leadership. Wade thought about that. He thought about Sloane Fairfax, who had not been supposed to be on this ship, who had added herself to the manifest at the last minute. And he thought about what Pete had said, who wanted this ship to go down, and then the darker question that followed it like a shadow. Who wanted her on it when it did? He told her. He found Sloane in the officer's lounge, working from a notebook, actual pen and paper, because her devices had been damaged in the surge, reviewing what he suspected were financial documents from memory. She looked up when he came in. He shut the door. He sat down across from her and told her everything. What Pete had found, what it meant, what the possible implications were. She listened without moving. Her face was completely still in that way that Wade had initially read as coldness and was now beginning to understand was something different. A wall she'd built so carefully and for so long that the wall had started to feel like her actual face. You're certain it was deliberate, she said when he finished. I've been in maritime safety for 12 years. Yes, I'm certain. Who? That's what you need to think about. Someone with access to the ship's engineering schematics. Someone who knew the design well enough to target a specific structural weakness. And someone who, he chose his next words carefully, someone who might have known you'd be on board. Sloane's expression shifted. Barely, but it shifted. Conrad Ashby, she said. Not a question. Flat. Cold. Like a diagnosis. Tell me about him. She told him. Conrad Ashby, 43, third-generation money. A man who'd spent 10 years as a silent partner in Fairfax Maritime before Sloane's father died. He'd expected, when Robert Fairfax died, to be handed significant operational control. Instead, Sloane had bought him out, efficiently, legally, at fair market value, and shown him the door. He'd been furious. He'd challenged the buyout in court. He lost. He's been trying to reacquire a stake in the company for 3 years, Sloane said. Through proxies, through board pressure, through acquisitions of companies that do business with us. Everything has been legal. So far. So far, Wade said. He was engaged to me. Once. A long time ago. Her voice didn't change, but something in her posture did, the slightest stiffening. Before I understood what he actually wanted. Sloane. It was the first time he'd used her first name. She didn't correct him. If the ship going down was meant to look like an accident, and you were supposed to be on it, we need to think about what happens when we get back to shore. She met his eyes. Because a man who does this, Wade continued, to this level of planning, with this kind of access, he's not going to stop at a ship. The silence stretched. Then Sloane reached into her jacket. Even now, even after a night of storm and repairs, she was in her coat, which Wade found oddly impressive, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She slid it across the table. Wade looked at it. It was a printed email, one of the last things she'd received before the communications went haywire. From an address he didn't recognize. Sent to Sloane's private, supposedly secure email. You should have sold when you had the chance. This is your last warning. Some accidents are just accidents. Others are messages. Dated the morning before the storm hit. Wade stared at it. You knew, he said quietly. Before the storm. You knew something was wrong. I suspected. Her voice was even. I didn't think, she stopped. I miscalculated. I thought it was a threat designed to rattle me. I thought staying on board would demonstrate that I couldn't be rattled. Instead, it put you in the middle of it. Yes. A pause. I miscalculated. Sloane Fairfax, saying those words, I miscalculated, with the same directness she applied to everything else. No defensiveness. No spin. Just the plain fact of it. Wade looked at her for a moment. Okay, he said. Okay, what? Okay, we deal with it. We get to shore. We go through Pete's documentation of the damage. He's been photographing everything. We get that to the Coast Guard and to the FBI, because this is federal. And then we deal with Conrad Ashby. He paused. Together. Because you're going to need someone who can corroborate what happened on this ship, and that's me. She looked at him for a long, careful moment. Why? She said finally. Why what? Why do you just engage? You don't know me. I'm not particularly easy to know. Most people in your position would be taking notes and staying out of it. Wade thought about it for a second. Most people in my position, he said, haven't spent the last 12 hours keeping a ship from sinking with someone. That changes the math a little. For just a moment, the briefest, most unguarded flash, something that looked remarkably like warmth moved across Sloane Fairfax's face. Then it was gone. But it had been there, and Wade had seen it. In the quiet of the afternoon, Wade found himself on the aft deck, watching the water. The ocean after a storm has a particular quality, exhausted and still, the way everything feels after something enormous has passed. The swells were long and slow. The sky was a brilliant, washed blue. He heard footsteps and wasn't surprised when Sloane appeared beside him. She stood close enough to talk, but maintained that Sloane Fairfax distance, measured, considered. She'd taken her coat off. For the first time, in a simple sweater and with her hair loose from whatever it had been pinned in, she looked like a person who hadn't always been a CEO. You have something in your vest pocket, she said, nodding at the slight bulge. Wade reached in and pulled out Bruno, the little green brachiosaurus. He held him up. Sloane blinked. My son's, Wade said. He said it was good luck. He named it Bruno. Sloane looked at the small dinosaur. Then, unexpectedly, she let out a short, genuine laugh. Just one, surprised out of her. Did it work? Ship's still floating, Wade said. So, probably. She shook her head, still smiling slightly. It changed her face completely. Made her look younger. Made her look like someone who laughed more once, a long time ago. How does he do it? She asked. Your son. How does a 7-year-old just hand you a dinosaur and tell you it's lucky, and you take it? How do you just accept that? Wade thought about it. Because he means it. And because it doesn't cost me anything to believe him. And because sometimes, he paused. Sometimes the most useful thing in the world is something small that someone who loves you put in your hand. The ocean moved slowly beneath them. I haven't had anyone put anything in my hand in a very long time, Sloane said quietly. It came out like something she hadn't meant to say. She didn't take it back, though. I know, Wade said. She glanced at him sharply. I'm not saying I know your life, he said carefully. I just mean it's obvious. Not in a pitying way. Just, it's clear you've been alone in this for a long time. That's by design. I know that too. She was quiet for a while. The water kept moving. My father used to say that the ocean doesn't care about your titles, she said eventually. He grew up poor. Working-class Portuguese family in Fall River. He worked on fishing boats before he started the company. He used to say the ocean didn't know who you were, so you had to know who you actually were before you got on it. She paused. I think he was trying to tell me something, toward the end, about who I'd become. I wasn't ready to hear it. Are you ready now? She looked at him sidelong. I don't know. Maybe. Wade set Bruno on the railing, right at the edge, looking out at the ocean. There, he said. He's earned the view. Sloane looked at the small green dinosaur standing on the railing of a luxury ship in the middle of the Atlantic, and the smile that came was soft and real and entirely unguarded. He has, she agreed. They talked. It wasn't planned. It happened the way real conversations happen, starting with something surface level and then, because the night was strange and they were still technically stranded and neither of them had much left to perform, going somewhere genuine. Wade talked about Claire. Not the accident. He rarely talked about the accident, but Claire before. The butterfly lectures. The way she could talk to anyone, anywhere, and make them feel like the most interesting person in the room. The way she'd always left her reading glasses on top of the refrigerator and blamed everyone else when she couldn't find them. Sloane listened the way she did everything, completely, with her full attention. You miss her every day, she said. Not a question. Every day, he agreed. But it's different now than it was. The first year it was like walking through water. Everything slowed down and heavy. Now it's more like, she's in the air around Finn. And things he does. It's still there, but it's not all there is. Sloane nodded slowly. When my father died, she said, I cried for exactly 4 hours. Then I went to the office and started restructuring his leadership team. I told myself that's what he would have wanted. I'm not sure that was true. I think he would have wanted me to cry for at least a week. Did it ever catch up to you? Long pause. I think, she said carefully, it's been catching up to me slowly for 6 years. And I've been running at exactly the same speed it chases me. Until about 20 hours ago. What happened 20 hours ago? A wave hit a ship, she said. And everything I used to outrun, it was suddenly completely irrelevant. Wade looked at her. What did that feel like? She thought about it seriously. Terrifying. And then, she stopped, reconsidered, and then almost like relief. Which I don't entirely understand. I think I do, Wade said. She raised an eyebrow. When Claire died, every single thing I'd built my sense of safety around disappeared. And once the initial devastation passed, what was left was just reality. Actual, stripped-down reality. No illusions. No performance. And as brutal as that was, he paused. There was something clean about it. Being forced to see what was actually real. Sloane absorbed that. The things I've used as armor, she said slowly. The inaccessibility. The ruthlessness. She gestured vaguely at herself. All of this. It started as protection. And then it became habit. And then it became who everyone thought I was. And at some point, I genuinely couldn't find the line anymore between the armor and the person under it. What do you feel like right now? Wade asked. Under the armor. Tired, she said. Genuinely, deeply tired. And she seemed to search for the word. Curious. About what things might look like if I stopped running. Wade was quiet. The rescue ship's lights appeared on the horizon at that moment. Tiny, far away, but real. He pointed. There they are. Sloane looked. In the darkness, with the rescue lights blinking in the distance and the ocean finally, truly calm around them, she looked like someone who had been through something and survived it and wasn't quite sure yet who that made her. Wade, she said. Yeah. Thank you. She paused. For talking to me like a person. He looked at her. You are a person. I know. A quiet breath. I forget sometimes. And everyone around me lets me forget. I won't do that, he said simply. She looked at him for a moment, then looked back at the horizon, at the rescue lights getting slowly, steadily closer. I know, she said. The Coast Guard's investigation began before the rescued crew had fully dried off. Pete Stroud's photographs were methodical and damning. The scored seals, the precise nature of the damage, combined with the threatening email Sloane provided, and the financial trail that investigators began pulling on within hours of the initial report. Conrad Ashby's connection to a third-party maritime engineering subcontractor that had performed supplementary maintenance on the Meridian Star 2 weeks before the voyage. It came together fast. Conrad Ashby was arrested at his home in Greenwich, Connecticut, at 7:42 in the morning, 41 hours after the Meridian Star went silent. He denied everything. His lawyers were already assembled, expensive, and utterly professional. But the evidence was what it was. Sloane received the call about the arrest while sitting in a Coast Guard facility in Boston, wrapped in a foil emergency blanket over her coat, which she had apparently refused to remove even in crisis protocol. She took the call. She listened. She said, "Thank you. I'll be in contact with the FBI within the hour." She ended the call. Then she sat quietly for a moment. Wade, sitting across from her with a cup of genuinely terrible Coast Guard coffee, watched her process it. "It's over," he asked. "The immediate crisis. The legal situation will take months." She looked at the phone in her hand. "He almost killed us. He almost killed 18 people just to get his hands on a company. People do a lot for money," Wade said. "Not people. Conrad." She said the name like something she was putting down for the last time. "I knew he was ambitious. I knew he was ruthless. I didn't think he was," she stopped. "I thought I understood him. I was wrong." "You survived him," Wade said. She looked up. "We survived him." A beat. "How's Finn?" she asked suddenly. Wade blinked. I haven't called yet. I wanted to wait until." "Call him," she said. "Right now? Call your son." He looked at her. Then he pulled out his phone, waterlogged but somehow still functional, because Wade had kept it in a sealed bag in his vest because maritime safety, and called the number. It rang once. "Daddy." The sound of Finn's voice at full volume was so sudden and so enormous that several Coast Guard personnel nearby looked up. "Hey, Bud," Wade managed. "Grandma Patty said you were on a boat that got hit by a big storm, and I told her you were fine because you had Bruno." "I did have Bruno. Bruno was very helpful. I knew it." "Did the ship sink?" "The ship did not sink. Because of Bruno. Largely because of Bruno, yes." Finn laughed, Claire's laugh, and Wade closed his eyes for just a second. When he opened them, Sloane was looking away, giving him privacy. but he could see the slight brightness around her eyes that she was containing with tremendous discipline. "I'll be home tonight," Wade said. "I'll pick you up from Grandma Patty's, and we'll get pizza. Can I pick the toppings?" "You can pick the toppings." "Okay, Daddy." "Yeah. I'm glad you didn't sink." "Me too, buddy. Me too." He ended the call. Looked up. Sloane was looking at the middle distance, her jaw working slightly with something she wasn't saying. "He sounds wonderful," she said quietly. "He's everything," Wade said. Simply. Completely. Outside. Boston waterfront. Real daylight. Solid ground beneath their feet. The world continuing its business around them as if nothing extraordinary had happened. They stood together on the dock while various authorities and logistics personnel moved around them. It was loud. It was crowded. It was the relentless machinery of the world grinding back into motion. And somehow, despite all of it, they stood in a pocket of quiet. Sloane's assistant, who had been evacuated on the first lifeboat and spent the last day alternately panicking and making calls, had arrived with a company car and a fresh set of clothes and was hovering at a respectful distance, clearly uncertain about the energy between her boss and the man with the clipboard. Sloane's lawyers were on their way. The company's PR team was already drafting statements. The machine of Sloane Fairfax's life was clicking back into place around her. And Wade could see, in real time, the armor going back on. Not entirely, not completely, but piece by piece, the posture straightening, the expression calibrating, the walls returning to their default positions. He watched it happen and felt something complicated about it. She turned to him. "I have something I need to discuss with you," she said. Her voice was back in full Sloane Fairfax mode, measured, precise. But underneath it, if you knew to listen, and Wade now knew to listen, there was something else. Something uncertain and real and almost fragile. "Okay," he said. She reached into her coat. Her assistant had brought the coat, of course, and produced a sealed document folder. She held it out to him. "What is this?" he asked. "Open it." He did. Inside was a formal legal document, multiple pages, dense with language that Wade was not a lawyer but could follow the general shape of. Fairfax Maritime Corporation. Equity structure. Transfer of shares. He read it twice. "Sloane," he said slowly, "hear me out. This says you're transferring 15% of Fairfax Maritime equity to me. That's..." He did the math in his head and stopped doing the math because the number was staggering. "That's not. It's not a gift," she said, and her voice was controlled but quick. "It's a structural protection. With Conrad's position now in legal limbo, the board is going to be fractious. There are 3 other shareholders who have been quietly aligned with Conrad's agenda for the past 18 months. I've known about them. I've been managing them. If they coordinate before I can neutralize their positions, they could create a governance crisis." She paused. A 15% stake in the hands of someone with documented whistleblower status, someone who can speak to what happened on the Meridian Star, creates a legal and reputational firewall that makes any hostile action against me significantly more complicated. Wade stared at her. "I'm not taking this," he said. "Wade, I'm not taking this, Sloane. It's a business arrangement. You'd have no operational obligations. The equity creates a legal position, nothing more. Stop." She stopped. He folded the documents, held them out to her. She didn't take them. "Listen to me," he said. "What happened on that ship, I didn't do any of it for equity. I did it because it was my job, and because you needed help, and because you're a person. You don't owe me 15% of your company. It's not about owing. Then what is it about?" Sloane looked at him. And here's the thing about a person who has spent a decade building walls. When the wall finally comes down, even partially, even for a moment, you can see everything behind it. "I don't want you to leave," she said. Her voice was even, completely even, but the words were raw. "I built this entire complicated legal rationale in my head on the boat ride in," she continued, "about how the equity arrangement made structural sense and served the company's interests and..." She stopped. "And it does. All of that is actually true. But that's not why I did it." Wade waited. "I did it because you are the first person in a very long time who has talked to me like a human being. And I am terrified." The words seemed to cost her something. "I am genuinely terrified of you going back to your life, and me going back to mine, and this becoming one of those things that happened and then didn't." Wade was quiet for a long moment. The dock moved around them. Seagulls. Traffic. The world. You don't need to give me 15% of your company to see me again, he said finally. She blinked. I know that. Do you? A pause. Intellectually, yes. Sloan. Yes. I'm not going to take the equity. But I would take, he stopped. Let the pause sit for exactly the right amount of time. I'd take coffee. If you wanted to have coffee. When you're ready. No lawyers, no legal documents. Just coffee. Sloan Fairfax, CEO, billionaire, untouchable, precise, controlled, looked at him with something completely uncontrolled moving across her face. I don't really do coffee, she said. Then tea. Whatever you want. The point stands. That's it, she said. After all of this, your counteroffer is coffee? I'm a man of simple tastes, he said. And then, slowly, genuinely, like something that had been held back for a very long time finally letting go. Sloan Fairfax laughed. Not a short, surprised laugh like before. A real one. Full and unguarded and human and wonderful. It transformed her face. It transformed the whole doc, honestly. Wade looked at her laughing and thought, without intending to, Claire would have liked her. Okay, Sloan said when the laugh settled. Okay, coffee. Yeah. Don't push it, she said. But she was still smiling. He took the legal documents and put them back in her hands. She looked at them. For what it's worth, he said, the firewall strategy is actually a good legal idea. You should talk to your lawyers about creating that position some other way. She shook her head. You're impossible. I'm thorough, he said. There's a difference. The thing about Wade Harmon was that he didn't rush things. He'd called her the week after the incident, not to revisit the legal question, just to check in. They'd talked for 40 minutes about the investigation's progress, about the board situation at Fairfax Maritime, about nothing in particular. It was easy in a way that surprised both of them. The week after that, coffee. A small place in Back Bay, nothing fancy. 2 hours. They talked about her father's fishing boat stories, about Finn's ongoing dinosaur scholarship, about why Wade had chosen maritime safety of all possible careers. The answer involved a near miss on a cargo ship at 22 and a deep conviction that preventable disasters should be prevented. About a book Sloan had been meaning to read for 3 years and never had. She did not bring lawyers. He did not bring a clipboard. It was just 2 people in a coffee shop, and it was good. The third time, he brought Finn. He told Finn very carefully beforehand that this was a friend from work, and that she was nice, and that he should be himself. Finn looked up at him with grave brown eyes and said, Is she the lady from the ship? Wade blinked. How did you? Grandma Patty said you were on the ship with your boss, and she was on the news. I saw her picture. Finn considered this. She looks serious. She is, a little. But she's also good. Did she know about Bruno? She did. She thought Bruno was very important. Finn nodded, apparently satisfied. Okay. They met at the park because Finn had pointed out that parks were better than coffee shops because you could run around, and Wade had not been able to construct a counterargument. Sloan arrived in jeans. Actual jeans, which Wade suspected might be the 3rd time she'd worn them in a decade, with her hair down and no coat. She looked nervous in the most composed possible way, which was still pretty nervous. Finn looked at her. Sloan looked at Finn. You're the boss, Finn said. I am, Sloan agreed. My dad's really good at his job, Finn said seriously. He finds things that are broken. He does, Sloan said. He's very good at it. He found things on my ship that I didn't know were broken. Finn absorbed this. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and produced a plastic dinosaur, a pterodactyl, smaller than Bruno, orange. He held it out to Sloan. This is Pepper, Finn said. She's good at finding things because she can fly and see everything from above. He paused. She's a girl. You can have her. Sloan looked at the small orange pterodactyl in Finn's extended hand. And something happened in her face that she did not control and did not try to. She took the dinosaur. Carefully. Both hands. Thank you, Finn, she said. Her voice was even and it was not even. She's good luck, Finn said. Like Bruno. I'll keep her very safe, Sloan promised. Finn nodded, apparently decided. Okay, he said. Do you want to see how far I can throw a rock in the water? I would very much like to see that, Sloan said. And Finn grabbed her hand. The unself-conscious, absolute confidence of a 7-year-old who has decided someone is okay, and pulled her toward the pond. Wade stood there and watched the 2 of them go, the CEO of a billion-dollar company being towed along by a gap-toothed kid in a dinosaur t-shirt. He reached into his pocket, felt Bruno's familiar plastic edges. He thought about Claire, not with the heavy, waterlogged grief of the first year, not with the aching absence of the second, with something gentler, something that felt, for the first time, almost like permission. She would have liked this, he thought again. He walked toward the pond, toward Finn's delighted shouts and Sloane's surprised and genuine laughter. 6 months later, the investigation is concluded. The Meridian Star has been repaired and launched. Conrad Ashby is awaiting trial. And on a morning in October, Wade got to work early. Not his ship inspection work. Those assignments came and went with the fleet schedule. He was at the Fairfax Maritime headquarters on a different kind of errand. Pete Stroud had been formally commended for his role in documenting the Meridian Star sabotage, and there was a quiet company acknowledgement happening in the main conference room that morning. He signed in at the front desk. The receptionist, new since the restructuring, looked at his badge and said, "Mr. Harmon? Miss Fairfax asked me to let you know she'd like to see you in her office when you're done downstairs." Wade nodded. "Tell her I'll be up after." He went down to the commendation. Pete Stroud, red-faced and uncomfortable with attention, shook hands with senior leadership and mostly looked at the floor. Wade stood in the back and gave him a nod when Pete caught his eye. Pete smiled. Some things don't need words. Afterward, Wade took the elevator to the executive floor. He'd been up here 4 times in the past 6 months. It still felt slightly surreal. The view, the silence, the particular quality of air that expensive square footage somehow creates. But less surreal than before. Sloane's assistant, a sharply organized woman named Greta who had apparently decided Wade was acceptable, waved him toward the corner office. He knocked. "Come in." Sloane was at her desk, reading something. She looked up, and the expression she wore was not the one she had at press events or board meetings or in the news photos where she looked like she'd been sculpted from something very cold and very precise. It was the other expression, the one with room in it. "How was Pete's thing?" she asked. "Awkward." He hated every second of it. He looked thrilled. She smiled. "Good." She set down what she'd been reading. "I have something for you." "Is it another legal document worth several $1,000,000? "No," she said patiently. "It's not a legal document." She pushed something across the desk. It was a framed photograph. Wade leaned forward to look. It was a picture of Finn, not one he'd given her. One she'd taken herself, covertly, the day at the park. Finn mid-throw, rock in his hand, completely focused, completely himself. That enormous gap-toothed grin, Claire's eyes, the absolute wholehearted commitment to throwing a rock as far as possible. Wade stared at it. "I had it developed," Sloane said, "and framed. I wanted you to have it. I take a lot of things from this desk home." She stopped. "This should be on your desk. Not mine." He looked up from the photograph. "I have one on mine too," she said quietly, and before he could respond she added, "Don't make a big thing of it." "I wasn't going to." "You were absolutely going to." He picked up the frame, looked at Finn's face in it, felt the familiar warmth that was no longer only grief, that had something new woven through it now, something forward-facing and careful and real. "Sloane," he said, "You know that coffee we've been having? I believe the count is currently 14 coffees. 15 if you include the tea incident." "The tea incident does not count as coffee, Wade." 15 encounters, then?" "What about them?" she asked. He set the photograph down, looked at her directly, the way he always did, straightforward, no performance, no armor, just himself. "I think I'm done calling them coffee," he said. "What would you call them?" she asked carefully. "I don't know yet," he said. "Something that means," he thought about it, "something that means this is real and it matters and I'm not going anywhere." Sloane looked at him. Then she looked at her desk. At the small orange pterodactyl, Pepper, that lived between her monitor and her phone, which her assistant had tried to move on 3 separate occasions and Sloane had, each time, quietly moved back. She picked up Pepper, looked at her. "Finn gave me this," she said, "because he decided I was okay. He's a good judge of character. He has his father's instincts," she said. Wade was quiet for a moment. "Is that a compliment?" he asked. She looked at him with that expression, the one with room in it, the one she only wore when no one else was watching. "Don't push it," she said. But she was smiling. And this time, the smile stayed. "Here's what I want you to hold on to from this story." Wade Harmon packed a ham sandwich, a thermos of coffee, and a laminated photo of his son for what was supposed to be a 2-day routine inspection. He came home with something he hadn't packed for. Not equity, not legal protections, not some dramatic, cinematic rescue. He came home with the knowledge that the walls people build around themselves, the real ones, the ones built from grief and ambition and fear and years of going it alone, those walls don't come down all at once. They come down one honest conversation at a time. One moment of holding a flashlight in a flooded corridor and not being treated like a prop. One small plastic dinosaur handed across a table by a 7-year-old who decided, with the unassailable confidence of a child, that someone was okay. Sloane Fairfax's final demand wasn't really about equity. It was about a woman who'd been outrunning her own life for 6 years and finally stopped. It was about someone who'd built so much armor that she'd forgotten what it felt like to reach through it. And it was about realizing that what she actually needed wasn't a firewall. It was a person who would talk to her like she was one. Wade didn't take the equity. He took the coffee. And that changed everything. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment. Tell me which moment got you. Tell me if you've ever built your own walls so high you forgot what the view used to look like. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. Hit the bell. Come back for the next one. Because at Crest Stories, we don't just tell you stories. We tell you the ones that are worth staying for.